I'm sleeping and right in the middle of a
Girls are following me around. They're ruining my whole life.
Aren't you exaggerating just a little?
You think I'm exaggerating? Huh. You should have seen what happened to me today while I was registering for classes.
Let's see, you're taking auto shop. Auto shop? Me too.
70s teen idols, the Partridge Family. David Cassidy knows what it's like to be a heartthrob adored by teenage girls everywhere, and also what it's like to see your mugshot plastered all over the news and to go to rehab. Well, David Cassidy is with me in the chair tonight exclusively. Welcome to you, David.
Thank you, Piers. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, I mean, how are you? Because all I know about you recently is what I've read in headlines.
Please. All you would know about me recently is through the celebrity websites or internet, or seeing my mugshot from getting a DUI, actually getting 2 in the last year, 9 months. And it's very painful, especially when I spent most of my life being what I would consider a very loving, caring, charitable man, and someone who has always protected my own image until the time, not wanting to disappoint the millions of fans that I have around the world. And it's very humbling, and it's also humiliating. So here I am being sober for 2 months, as of a little over 2 months. And I have been in rehab with the exception of about 10 days over the last over 3 months now, and I'm going to stay as long as it takes. But we'll talk some more about that, I assume. I won't completely dominate this conversation.
Well, listen, it's about you.
Yeah.
I mean, do you now accept that you're an alcoholic? Have you come to terms with that? Is that how you see yourself?
Yes, I am most definitely an alcoholic, and the interesting thing about it, and the way you end up with multiple DUIs, I never got arrested for anything until I was basically 60 years old. And I have very, very strong values about what I am and who I am. I've done an enormous amount of bringing light into people's lives, and I'm very proud of that, and touching and inspiring people. But I'm as flawed as any alcoholic or drug addict or any addict. Up until a little over 2 months ago, I had been lying to myself and consequently lying to everyone about my disease.
For how long?
I started really drinking in 2002, and it escalated further and further. I didn't drink at all for over a decade, which is why I was in denial originally about, I'm not an alcoholic. I've had booze, and with my wife and my son and everything else, and we lived sober free. I mean, you couldn't do the amount of work and things that I did. I certainly never drank or took any drugs or narcotics, contrary to whatever has been printed when I was doing the Partridge Family, or thereafter, for that matter.
Let's just go back briefly. We'll come back to what you've been talking about. It's an incredibly honest start to an interview.
Well,
and I commend you for that, because I wasn't expecting that. But let's go back to when you became this huge superstar. I was, I think
you were
7 or 8.
There you go. You were just a child.
But you were the biggest thing in Britain. You were the biggest thing in America. You were the biggest pop star in the world.
Right.
You had a bigger fan club than Elvis Presley or the Beatles at one stage. It's hard to imagine that kind of stratospheric fame and success. Justin Bieber has it, and we're going to come to him in a moment, One Direction. But it's different when you get taken out of a group, as you were, and become the person.
Yep.
How much fun was it, and how long did the fun last?
Well, there were always fun elements, and I learned so much. I had been on Broadway. I moved back. I'd worked at the LA Theater Company in my high school, and then I moved back to New York 2 weeks after I graduated. I'd followed in my father and my mother's footsteps. I wanted to be in the theater. I began studying and taking a part-time job in Manhattan, and then I got an agent, got some headshots like actors do, And I went on 200 auditions and got a no. And finally, I went on my 7th audition and got a featured role in a Broadway show, which ended up being a flop. But it started me, I was flown out to do a screen test. I ended up getting an Ironside, Bonanza, Mod Squad, Marcus Welby, all these big featured roles in these shows when I was virtually just 19.
And what effect does that have on a 19-year-old kid? Because we're seeing what Justin Bieber's going through, but it's a very different age now. He has particular issues. The paparazzi weren't around really doing their thing. I mean, they were there.
Oh,
but
how wrong you are.
Really? As much
with me?
as much in the early 70s?
Oh, everywhere. I mean, you'll see some clips. I'm not saying you have them here, but it was insanity. I mean, there were people in and out. I'm sleeping in front of my gates, and I had to take different routes into the theater, into the studio. When the partition really, exploded. But for me, I always wanted to be a credible actor. I was always a musician. I was played, but I never pursued my career as a musician. It was just fate, the way the stars aligned themselves. And I was very professional, and my father was a big influence on me. His professional, his work ethic, he has instilled in myself and also in my brothers as well, Sean, Patrick, and Ryan.
You amassed vast fame, a lot of money, although not as much money as you perhaps would deserved, and we'll come to that. The attention of...
You think?
Yeah.
You think?
You were a heartthrob to millions of young girls. Life must have seemed, I guess, for a while, pretty perfect. When did it turn?
No. See,
did it ever feel perfect?
No. What it felt like was incredibly exhilarating, extremely exhausting. I got up at 6. I was there at 7:30. We shot film. I would shoot all day on the set. 7:12, I'd drive over the hill and start recording, not only for all of our shows, but all the albums for the Partridge Family, but I also recorded as David Cassidy. That's 2 recording artists' career, a television career. Every lunchtime, I would do photo sessions or interviews. And every weekend, I would do 2 shows on Friday. I'd fly out wherever I was going with 30 people and do 2 shows on Saturday, do 2 shows on Sunday, and fly back. And I did that for years. And on my hiatus, I would just go out on tour for weeks and weeks at a time. So
was it even enjoyable towards the end?
There are many, many wonderful moments. I mean, knowing that you've had such a positive impact on the world.
But what are the negatives?
Well, your loss of privacy, your loss of being robbed of your own image. People thought I was the guy, Keith, and it was extraordinarily successful. My name, likeness, and voice being used on everything from plastic guitars, the David Cassidy plastic guitar. You can imagine how, as a musician, I was really thrilled about that when I saw one. To, lunch buses, cards, color forms, those little things that we used to flip through. I forgot what they're called, but I mean, everything. David Cassidy magazine, David Cassidy's Love Beads, and all that stuff. And, I was 5 years older than what I was playing.
Did you start to believe your own hype?
Not once. Not for a moment. I come from humble beginnings, believe it or not. My parents were both actors and struggling, and both from New York and right around Manhattan and Long Island and New Jersey. Worked in the railroad on my dad's side, like 100 and some odd consecutive years, and still. My grandfather read meters for the public service, and when my parents split up, I was about 3.5, 4, I moved in with my grandparents, and he had retired, and, he was a very, very strong, wonderful, caring, loving man. And I think his influence on me had a lot to do with how I survived the mental and emotional stress and breakdown, depression.
What was before we get to the fall and what happened to you?
I had a few.
Right, I'll come to that sort of darker side of this, but if you could put your finger on the single best moment of those successful years, which moment would you choose?
that's an emotional one for me. I would choose the one where my grandfather, in his last year being there, he read the Bible every day. I had to go to church because my grandparents were very religious. They were born in the late 1800s. They saw me in concert at Madison Square Garden, and my father was there also, and my mother. My whole family was there, and because I grew up in New York and Manhattan and right outside, Madison Square Garden was it. You know, I played massively bigger places than that, you know, be it the Astrodome or, you know, White City Stadium or, you know, Main Road in Manchester. So, I mean, those kinds of places, and Melbourne Cricket Grounds, you know, all over the world. But to me, being a New Yorker and also being American, Madison Square Garden was it. And it was just so emotional for me. And I just felt so blessed to have that moment with them and have them see me the way I was doing something I knew I could do very well. And oddly enough, I'm much better now. But doesn't that happen with age? It's like,
but they must have been
wine,
they must have been incredibly proud of you.
Oh my God, tears and everything after the show. It was like, oh.
It's amazing that even now it's making you emotional.
Yeah, it's very emotional because I mean, you asked me what the really highlight, the most wonderful thing, and that was really it. I mean, outside of the birth of my son, Bo, I mean, it's a highlight of my life. You know, really.
David, we've got this wall here you've been looking at with great curiosity. You know, some pictures of you when you were much younger. And everything. When you look at the young,
thank you. That's recent, but yeah.
But when you look at a young, you know, handsome, ambitious, fresh-faced David Cassidy, what do you feel about that person?
I feel a sense of real pride about what I was able to do in my life, and not only being successful, but also taking on an enormous amount of pressure, work constantly, knowing the pressure and the stress of not just the media following me, which they did. I mean, it's for most people it wasn't nothing like this now because of the internet, but for me, it was pretty insane.
What is that feeling like when it starts to get suffocating?
Yeah.
What does it do to you?
Well, it made me isolate even more. And
does it make it hard to make normal friends, to have normal relationships with people?
Of course. First of all, people don't look at you the same way, even though they try, and they're still seeing that. You know, I saw him on the cover of Rolling Stone, or I saw him on the cover of Life magazine, whatever it is. You know, I saw him in TV. I know how big it, you know, and it distorts everybody and their vision of you. And consequently, if you have a decent amount of instinct, and if you can kind of figure out and understand people's motives, your instinct is good about people, you pretty much know. And sometimes it's okay. It's like, it's okay you like me because I'm this. But my best friends, the people that travel with me, were friends of mine since I was 13, 14 years old. And they knew me before, they knew me during, they knew me at my best and worst and everything else. And they're still, you know, one of them certainly.
What has been the worst period for you?
Which one?
Have the recent months been the worst period for you?
Well, in many ways.
The 2 DUIs, your third wife has filed for divorce.
Correct.
Everyone's been poring over, once again, David Cassidy's life,
right.
Lurid headlines.
Yeah.
It's appeared to the outside world that you've been on some horrible spiral. How do you feel about this?
Well, in a sense, they're right, but in a sense, it's, of course, distorted. I had been in rehab the last time I was arrested here in Los Angeles. I had been in rehab until I took off about 10 days to do some business and also some personal things that I needed to do, that I needed to address, because I had been in rehab for quite a while. And I started getting very serious about it. I went through a very, very difficult knowing I was not making any headway and was getting worse in terms of my relationship with my wife, We spent 26 years together and have a magnificent son, and it kind of all turned into hell.
Why?
I had DUIs. I have a problem with alcohol. I mean, I know it's a disease and I have to manage it every day.
What does it do to you, David? What, if you were giving your wife's side of things, what would she say about the effect the alcohol had on your relationship, you think?
She'd just say it made me made me a freaking and, I wasn't authentic. It's because I have an allergy to it. My personality changes. I'm not aware of it. I never stop talking. It's obnoxious. It's embarrassing. I'm glad I don't have the footage of me in that place, but it became more and more difficult because our relationship had split up quite significant over the past few years. We never actually stayed in the same house together. We owned the same house, but I would go away. She could stay at the house. She would go away, and I'd be back in the house. And, it just creates more and more, I think, adversarial feelings towards one another. And
how do you feel about the fact that she filed for divorce?
I feel very hurt by it because I had reached out to her trying to say, can't we just sit down and do this? What happened is we had a mutual attorney who was a friend of ours who had put together a whole agreement that we both agreed to, and the words were, I just want you to be happy, let's just be fair, it's fine. And then she saw a photograph of myself with a girl I'd been dating, and we'd been separated for literally over a couple of years, and she lives out in California, and I still live in Florida, so I think it all turned at that moment.
Do you talk to her now?
She won't speak with me. I've tried. She's just gotten a lawyer, and being in rehab and finding out through the media from people who go online. I don't go online. I don't read anything. I'm sort of a social idiot.
Probably wise at the moment.
Well, not just at the moment.
Just generally.
Never. Yeah, I mean, I'm proud of all the charity work I've done. I'm proud of doing the things that have lifted people's spirits and inspired musicians. And other people, when they were sad as kids, have said that they really connected with me. And whatever I have, it's not just I was a handsome guy. There are a lot of other handsome guys, much more handsome than me. And I just, for whatever reason, God just gave me something that I guess is authentic and human. And that's when I was drinking, I lost. I just became lonely, isolated. I would isolate. I would go and buy a bottle of booze and come back and go upstairs in my room, close the door, and stay there and drink alone. That's a sad, dark place to be, And until 5 weeks and 3 days ago, I was still in the denial stage, and I have to tell you that I had something miraculous happen to me for the first time in my 63 years. I had a spiritual experience and a spiritual awakening, and you can say what you will. I mean, I always I'm rather a cynic anyway, and very, very skeptical of those situations. I never understood people telling me they had a spiritual experience. I'd been to church for years and years, and
what was the experience?
I dropped to my knees, and I felt something go through me that was like, I felt this experience that was just like, thank you, God. I felt this relief. I begged it, and I was crying and weeping like a little boy, like a sobbing little infant, like I'm sure I did many times as a kid. And I felt this incredible sense of relief because I stopped lying to myself. And I really admitted that I am powerless over this. My sense of confidence and my own sense of self is I can do anything. I can kick anybody's ass, mentally, emotionally, not physically. But it happened to me. And
do you have moments, David, when you think, God, how did this happen to me?
Oh, God. When you don't drink for decades, you don't have a problem. You can go out and drink and have a glass of wine or something. That's not alcoholic. You know, alcoholic is what I became. It went from, you know, being very unhappy in my relationship, not being terribly thrilled about what I was doing professionally, and not being creative, which I've always been.
If Sue is watching this, your wife,
I hope she doesn't, but no, actually,
I'm sure she may.
I'm sure she might when
If
she hears
does,
about it.
What would you say to her?
Sue, I love you, and I only want you to be fair, and I just don't want to show up at our son's wedding or at an event for him and be throwing daggers at one another. If you have a problem with the fact I have a girlfriend, I'm sorry. I wish the best for you, and I would hope that you would consider me your 25-year, quarter of a century partner who did everything I could for you and your family and our family. And I'm sorry if you feel hurt. I'm sorry for the things that I did that might have hurt you, and I'm sure they did hurt you. I'm sorry for my alcoholism, but all I can do is just say, from this moment on and for the rest of my life, I have to manage my disease as a diabetic has to manage his. The only thing I can't do is ever have alcohol. I can have everything else. I don't take drugs. I don't do any of that. So I can have a great life and do the things I love to do, which I started doing 5 weeks ago. And it's an incredible feeling to have that, because it's like, I guess it's what sometimes with Christianity people think they are born again. I guess that's what it is. For me, it's a very spiritual thing. It
You
has
feel like you've got a chance to try and...
I not only have a chance, I am there. You know, no one can believe me, no one, and I don't expect them to, because I tried before, and the only thing I ever lied about was my alcoholism, was my drinking. And as soon as I would drink, I'd automatically like, no, I'm not drinking. What, me? No. And I was also lying to myself, and that's where I stopped. And I'm now working a very serious 12-step program, and I have been in rehab really for most part of 3 months, and I'm going back in once we complete this moment. And, you know, it's been an amazing journey, and this is the first time I've ever taken my David Cassidy mask off in front of the world, I hope. And I hope everyone hears me, and if you are unfortunate enough as I am, and as tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people are, I wish you every strength, and I hope that your journey leads you to a place that mine has led me to, and you can be really honest, and really, for the first time for me, being honest about it to myself and to everyone else.
Do you fear the possibility of going to jail because of the 2 DUIs?
No. No, they're in separate states. No, I know that that's not going to happen. Dude, if you're asking me if I fear jail, oh my God, yes. Just being in jail for 8 hours, being in a cell for 8 hours, I mean, they took me to South Central Los Angeles here, where a lot of the Crips and the Bloods were there, and they didn't have to, but they chose to. And I think it was a little bit of resentment towards fame or, you know, celebrity. I don't know. I don't want to even go there, but yeah, it was pretty heavy. And it's humiliating, you know, when guys are down there and cops are like, hey, there's David Cassidy. You know, I'm like, oh, yep, that's right. These are my handcuffs. And it's very humiliating. It's very shameful. It's a shameful act. I am not shame. I have a very good sense of my own core values about myself and about treating other people. So long as I don't drink, otherwise I turn into another person, apparently. I can't be outside of myself, but that's what I have heard from everyone. And the greatest, really, the greatest regret I have is that my son does not trust me any longer, and he's been living with his mother and being around her and is influenced to some degree, I'm sure. But he'll come back, and I will come back with him once he knows that this time it's It's life or death. If I take another drink, I'm going to die. Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, I'm dead. You know, they say it's a slippery slope. It's not a slippery slope. It's from 12 to 6 on the clock, and the whole face is ice. One sip, one drink, because there is no such a thing, not to an alcoholic. You have one, and you're done. I'd be done.
David, it's painful listening to you, but it's also, you know, it's great that you've been so self-aware about the problems you face.
You have to be, otherwise...
It's not easy doing this. I mean, you know, you're David Cassidy, you're talking to the world in such an incredibly honest way. It's not easy, I know that.
Well, it's actually very easy for me, and I'll tell you why. I don't want to have to hide or have people speculate what was it like. It was hell. And I'm ashamed of my actions. I didn't ask for alcoholism. I didn't ask for this disease. But like people with heart conditions, they have to manage that. I have to manage this. I have to go to work every day on what my alcoholism is about. That's working steps. That's calling my sponsor, who I have now, is an amazing human being. And he's actually an interventionist as well. And being in rehab every day, and 3 times a week I'm in with my own personal psychiatrist. I have psychologists and therapists every day, and I work in groups as well. And I hope I can inspire people, and honestly, and that's why this is easy for me.
Well, David, listen, I wish you all the very best with it.
Thank you very much, Piers.
You've been very honest. I do appreciate that. I want to just quickly mention the work that you've done for the Alzheimer's Foundation of America. Your mother suffered from that disease. You've done a lot of important work on that. Thank you for being so honest with me today.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that.
I wish you all the very, very best with your recovery.
Thanks so much.
Good to see you.
And you.
David Cassidy.
I'm sleeping and right in the middle of a good dream. Like all at once I wake up from something that keeps knocking at my brain.